Again, thank you for joining me this evening. The program is Get Your Shit Together, a basic game plan for your artist career. So it's everything A to Z that you need to know about being a professional artist. So note that all suggestions and tips are my opinions from years of experience as an artist and a gallerist, as well as from input and feedback from other art professionals such as gallery owners and art organization executives. As we all know, there is no one way to do anything. So you may choose to do things in a different way if you feel they are best for you and your particular situation. So tonight, the things that we're going to cover are generating a cohesive body of work, how to title your artwork, frame your artwork, price your artwork, create an artist portfolio website, write your artist bio, resume, and exhibit history, write your artist statement, identify and approach potential venues to exhibit your artwork, submit to juried shows, submit to art galleries, and promote yourself in your events. So as you can see, it's a very big agenda that we're going to cover tonight. So we're going to start out with creating a cohesive body of work. So gallerists are looking for artists with a signature style that is consistent and identifiable as their artwork. Cohesive can include subject matter, composition, style, technique, scale, size, shape, medium, presentation, or framing. So when I ask gallerists, what are you looking for? Their number one answer is we're looking for an artist with a cohesive body of work and a signature style. So this is very important to gallerists. And if you do this, if you create a cohesive body of work with a signature style, then you're going to have a great body of work for anybody to view and understand and digest. So if you're going to create a cohesive body of work, you must have a sufficient number of pieces. If you're interested in getting into a gallery, they may be interested in a particular series, and they may want to have 10 of your pieces, or if you do even smaller work, maybe even more than that. And so you need to have enough pieces. If you're going to, if your goal is to have your work in 5 galleries, then you may need to have 50 pieces available to be in galleries at any one time. So you need to keep that in mind. Artists often work in a series with variations on a theme and should organize their works in this manner. So as we are all artists, we like to experiment and try different things. So we may work with a particular subject matter or idea in mind as an umbrella statement for our work, but then we try different things and each one becomes a different series. So gallerists like artists to organize their work in series so it's easy to identify. And when they want to bring in an artist or include an artist in an exhibition, they're usually going to select pieces from one series. They very rarely select 2 from one series, 4 from series 2, 3 from series 6, etc. They don't mix up the series. They usually select from one series because they're all variations on a theme. So if you organize your work that way, it makes it easier for them. They also are looking for artists that communicate well and make a strong statement. So they're looking for artists that have a strong artist statement. So we're going to get into an artist statement in more detail a little later on. Okay, so any questions about generating a cohesive body of work? You may raise your hand. I can call on you if you have a question. Okay, Kathleen, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question briefly.
Hi, Stephen. I'm putting out my first series of 8 pieces, and I created them. They're all done with vector illustrations, and I've done 24 by 36, and I really love that aspect ratio. Beyond 24 by 36, I want to make smaller sizes such as 16 by 20, 20 by 24. So when I, of course, downsize, it's a different, those paper sizes are a different aspect ratio. In your opinion, is it okay to pretty much maintain the same aspect ratio and just increase the margin sizes, say like the left and right margin for the smaller sizes?
So honestly, my opinion is it's kind of awkward when it's not the same spacing around the piece. So
Mhm.
having extra space on the right and the left, it is doable, and I've seen artists do that, but it seems a little awkward. It's like the artist didn't think about when they made it in advance, how they were going to mount and frame it, or how it was going to be presented. And it was like an afterthought. Oh, I'm going to have to add extra space on each side. So as a gallerist and a professional, I'd rather see work that has the same amount of space on all the sides. So you may need to cut down on your ratio for the smaller pieces, or else find frames or mats that are custom made for that ratio.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
sure. Thanks for asking your question. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume the presentation. So titling your artwork, okay? I think titling your artwork is really important. And we're gonna spend a little bit of time talking about this. So titles offer added information or clues into the meaning of each piece. So you should take advantage of the opportunity to communicate with the viewer and not use the word untitled for your artwork. So when people view your artwork, they may only look at it for 60 seconds or a short amount of time. Or if somebody's watching a film, they're seeing it for 2 hours, or they're reading a book. They've got 300 pages and a week of time that they're reading it to get information. But looking at a piece of artwork a visual piece of artwork, they don't have as much time to view it and study it. So there's not as much opportunity to communicate. So using a good title to help people understand what the artwork is saying and what it's about is really helpful. So you should use a consistent format of individual titles in each series. So if you have a particular series, all the pieces within that series should be titled in the same manner. It could be a quotation by what one of the characters is saying in the piece, or it could be a location, or it could be 2 words, an adjective and a noun. So it's always a similar, consistent format. And titles are also great because they allow for easy identification of each piece. So I suggest also that you create titles for each series. And the titles, instead of just saying it, staying straight out, landscapes, seascapes, still lifes, coming up with something that's more poetic, that evokes feeling and emotion, as well as describing what the series is about. So coming up with great titles for artwork can be difficult. Many artists feel like it's more work to come up with a title than it is to create a masterpiece. But titles matter. A buyer wants to feel that artwork that they are about to purchase from you is one of your best ever. That is truly one of your masterworks. So they're going to have a hard time believing that if you call the piece untitled number 427. It means that this piece is nothing special. It's just another piece. So a good title becomes a part of the buyer's narrative. A particularly good title will help sell the artwork. The artist or the viewer will connect with the piece. Conversely, a bad title can hamper sales and keep people from making the purchase. So what makes a good title? A good title will provide insight into your inspiration for the artwork and may help the artwork tell its story. A good title will leave room for the viewer to bring his or her own meaning and interpretation to the artwork. Additionally, a good title will be memorable and catchy, be original, but not too cheesy. So I like in making artwork and titling artwork to have a little mystery so that the title or the artwork doesn't give everything away. It's like having pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that are missing from your piece. And then the viewer needs to kind of fill in the gaps, fill in the empty pieces with their own mind, their own interpretation. So a title, I think, is really good if it does that as well. It gives you some additional information, but it doesn't give away everything. And so somebody can bring their own interpretation to it. And also keep it short. There may be obvious exceptions, but keeping it relatively short so it's easy for people to remember. So how do you come up with titles? You start with the obvious. There are elements in the artwork that are key focal points. Use those elements as a jumping off point. So if there's flowers or landscape or a certain person that you're depicting in the piece, that's a good jumping off point. Was there a driving emotion or inspiration that led you to create the work? If so, try and draw a title from that inspiration. So many pieces of artwork evoke emotion and feeling. And so if that is part of what your work is about, draw on that emotion for your title. Is there an underlying story behind the work? Try to clue the buyer into the story with your title. Was it an experience that you had? It was a situation that happened to somebody else? Is there a story behind it? Try to share that story in your title. Try to put yourself in the viewer's shoe. What will they see when they look at your work? What do you want them to focus on? So the title can help them as well. Coming up with titles can become more difficult over time. So the first few pieces in a series, it's like the world's your limit. But then as you create more pieces and title more pieces, it becomes more difficult to find just the right words to use in your title. So all this sounds great in theory and will work for the first dozen or so pieces an artist creates. But what about after you've created hundreds of pieces? Eventually, you're going to run out of creative, unique titles. So to combat this issue, try to come up with a naming system. Look to poetry or mythology for inspiration. Having a dictionary or thesaurus around can help for others as well. So, think ahead. How many pieces are you going to make in this series? Are you going to make quite a few, or are you going to make a small number? And is it going to be easy or hard to come up with titles? So coming up with a naming system is really helpful. So one of the exhibitions I saw down in San Jose when I lived in the Bay Area just blew me away was charcoal drawings of figures, and in each piece there were two figures. And so as I looked through the exhibition, I thought, well, these are really nice pieces. They're very well executed, nice composition. Our artist definitely has skill here. But then I went back through and I read all the titles. And at first I was surprised. Each title was a sentence of what one figure was saying to the other. And all of a sudden, from the title, I knew who the characters were, who the figures were, what their relationship, what was going on in the image. And it gave so much more information. And so the artist had come up with a naming system that it would be a sentence of what one figure was saying to the other. So they came up with this in advance to create the pieces and then name them. And so I thought that was brilliant. So that's an example of a naming system. So create titles for each series as well. So each series that you make should have its own title, so it's easily identifiable. So what are examples of good titles? So some of the good titles that I found are short and sweet. There's commitment. That's loaded with symbolism and meaning. Or desert flame. Okay, so is it literally a desert and a flame, or is it a flame as in a sweetheart? And is it a flame that's glowing in the desert where there's nothing else? What does that mean? It evokes thought and evokes emotion. Aspen elegance is a great way to describe a location. So it's in Aspen, apparently, and it's exploring elegance within that location. Or another title that I liked a lot was Scarlet Passion. So it's naming a color that is prevalent in the piece and then the emotion that it is evoking. And another title that I really loved was Conversation with Myself. Again, it's loaded with ideas and thoughts about what that means, and it really interacts with the viewer. Okay, so any questions about creating titles for your work? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Okay, so I'm gonna, since there's no questions, I'm gonna ask you a question. So let's see, people that are on the screen. Ray, if you could unmute yourself and share with me one of the titles that you like that you've used in your artwork.
One of my pieces is titled When the Earth Has Won.
When the art has won.
When the Earth Has Won.
When the earth has won. Okay.
Yes, and I think that that really gets the point across
Okay. So
with
it's
the
very
piece.
evocative. It makes you think about it. And I can almost in my mind picture what elements might be in there. So that sounds like a really good title. How did you come up with that title?
I thought a lot about what I wanted what story I was telling with the artwork, and a really evocative way of drawing people to the conclusion of what the art is trying to tell.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
So that's cool. And did people respond to that title? Did they like that title?
Yeah, a lot of people like it. A lot of people don't. It if it really brings up a lot of questions for people, which I
Yeah.
think is fun because
Yeah,
you love.
because they engage with you.
Right, exactly.
That's great. Okay, Ray, thank you so much for sharing that title with us. I
Of
appreciate it.
course.
Okay, we're going to pick another artist. Owen, would you mind unmuting yourself and sharing with us a title that you've created that you really like?
Yeah, I definitely struggle with titling. I tend to be fairly straightforward. Um, the one that comes to mind, I named Stella Octangula, which is just the mathematical form that it was based off of. I sculpt geometric ceramic forms.
Okay. So the sculpture is based on geometry, and that's an actual geometrical term that people use. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so when people have seen that title, have they questioned what it means, or do people understand the title?
Yeah, I don't think it's a fairly uncommon name, so I think people might be curious as to where it comes from and be intrigued.
So one thing that I've seen a lot of artists do is put a subtitle with their titles to help give a little further explanation. So if you have the geometric term as the main title and then colon and maybe a subtitle that gives a little bit more understanding to what that means, or something that's easier for people to digest, then that may make it even more I guess, yeah, successful, yes.
Mhm.
Okay, Owen, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So Owen has a naming system for his pieces, since his pieces are based on geometric shapes. Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume the program. So let's get that back to that. Okay. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how to frame your artwork. So basically, everybody I talk to, gallery owners, art professionals, professional framers, always say, keep it simple and let the piece make the statement. You don't want a frame that's going to fight and overpower the piece. You want to let the piece make the statement. So in framing artwork, if you're actually going to frame a piece, today, what's popular and what, again, most framers suggest using wood, not metal, and black or white lacquer or natural wood, and not a color. Colors usually interfere with the piece. Unless there's a really good reason to use a bright red frame, you should use a frame that's more neutral. And the frame needs to be substantial enough to hold the weight of the piece. So it's a large piece, the frame needs to be thicker and heavier. And if it's a small piece, the frame can be thinner and smaller. Also, if you're going to mat your piece, mat using white or off-white mats with minimal texture. And if you want, you can do a thin black matte liner. So the thin black line around the piece between it and the mat, and therefore it makes it pop a little bit, it gives the piece a little bit more dramatic attention as well. There's a style called museum framing, and that's very popular, and it adds value. So as the term museum suggests, it came from museums that were using very small pieces like photographs from the 1890s that were very small. And if they put them in a little 8x10 frame, they would just kind of disappear on the walls in these large museum galleries. So they started framing them in a way where they may take a 3x5 photograph, and they may put 5 inches or 8 inches or even 10 inches of matting around all sides, and then frame it in a very simple black frame. And so all of a sudden, a little 3x5 image becomes 25 by 23, and it becomes much larger. And then that image in the middle of the mat gives more power. It sets it apart. And so that type of style of framing, where you have a lot more space of matting around the piece than typical, has become very popular, and it makes the piece larger, and therefore you can also add more to the price of the piece. If you're going to work with unframed artwork, so if you don't want to spend the money on framing, because framing can be very expensive, then if you're using stretched canvas, then that's fine to have it unframed. You want to make sure that it's sturdy enough that it doesn't wobble or move, that it has a thickness. So usually, if you buy a student's stretch canvas or canvas board, it's only 1/4 of an inch thick or 1/2 an inch thick or even an inch thick. It's not very thick, and it looks very flimsy, and it looks like it's a project from a student. But if you buy a canvas and it's 2 inches thick or 3 inches thick or even thicker than that, it gives it a presence, it gives it power. So the added thickness gives it more of a presence, and also allows you to charge more for it as well. You want to finish off the edges. You can either paint the edges a solid color, you can continue the image around the sides onto the edges. You want to make sure that no staples are visible, that all the staples are on the back, and so have it nice and clean. So that's a way to use stretch canvas and have it unframed. Or you could use a cradled panel or board. So cradled panels have become very common. You can find them at all art supply stores. They're wood or gessoed front. They usually have a wooden cradle around it that creates the frame. It kind of looks like it's a stretched canvas, but instead of the sides being canvas, the sides are wood. And again, the thickness of that also adds to the value and the presence of the piece. So those are 2 ways of selling and presenting unframed artwork that looks finished and can be sold without people thinking, oh, I need a frame for that. People can frame them if they like, but it's not necessary. Okay. And then the signature, since we're talking about frames, having your signature on your piece is very helpful. You use it as a logo. You keep it recognizable and consistent so people can read it. You want people to be able to read your name. And so one reason why I recommend this is a person in Chicago had bought one of my pieces of artwork, had it hanging in their condo. They went to a gallery. bought another piece of artwork to have it delivered to their home. When the gallery was delivering that artwork that the person had just purchased, they saw my artwork on display. They saw my signature. When they got back, that was legible and readable. When they got back to the gallery, they looked it up online, found my website, contacted me, and invited me to be represented in their gallery. So my logo was my calling card, and it created a great success. So place it where it's visible on front whenever possible. You may be making artwork that there's no place to sign it on the front. You might have to sign it on the back or on the side, or there may be some reason that you don't include your signature on your piece, but generally it helps make the piece more identifiable by you as the artist. And it also says, you know, I'm the artist, I finished this piece, I've put my signature on it, it is done. Okay, so any questions about framing your artwork? Raise your hands if you have any questions. Okay, let's see, I can't, is it Alo?
Yeah, I make very strangely shaped textiles that
Okay.
hang on the wall. And I generally hang them with invisible pins that you pin directly through the textile into the wall. But I don't know if there is like a better, more professional hanging system specifically meant for textiles. I can't frame them really.
Okay, so that makes sense. So at our gallery, we always had textile pieces in our major exhibitions. And so that was something that we did not allow artists to just use push pins or magnets in our walls. There had to be a hanging system for the textiles. So many of the artists came up with some type of rod that the pieces were suspended from. And it couldn't be just a piece of wood or a dowel that just looked like you went to the hardware store 3 minutes ago and brought it in to hang the piece. So it had to be finished. So a nice metal rod looked complete and finished. And something like that would be a good solution. But sometimes textile pieces can't hang all uniformly across. So you might have to come up with a different system. So another set of textiles that we displayed, the artist did little, what are they, like grommets, little metal circles that the piece then was suspended on from different places. So the piece had a jagged top. So there'd be a metal ring here, a metal ring there, a metal ring here. And so when you framed it that way, then the piece hung nice and flat. Other artists would have them hang away from the wall, so they might be 6 inches away, so they create a shadow as well. So again, the dowel helped in presenting that. So does that help answer that your question?
Yeah, knowing that I can't use pins is helpful.
Yeah, in a fine art gallery, they usually want some type of hanging system that then people that buy the artwork from the gallery can go home and easily hang it on their wall themselves. And if
Okay.
there's just pins, the people that bought the artwork may be a little daunted by how to hang that.
Okay.
Okay, thanks so much for your question. Okay, anyone else have another question about framing or mounting your artwork? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, who is, if you
My
are
name
gonna
is-
break in without me calling on you, you know, I ask that you raise your hand if you have a question. So please introduce yourself and share your name with us.
Yes, my name is Arvind. I did raise the hand. It didn't seem like it showed up.
Okay, so if you move your hand and then it's easier for me to see it. Okay, and your question is?
Yes. My name is Arvind. I have not ever exhibited in any gallery before. I'm just trying to get myself out there at this point in time. I didn't know the significance of logo the way you were talking about it. Is it, since I have no knowledge about going to a gallery and exhibiting, could you speak a little bit more about what is the expectation on having a logo on the art and stuff like that? I didn't see that as such an important thing, but you made it seem like it's very important.
Yeah, so the signature is, I say, use your signature as a logo. So most of us have learned to write in cursive, so you can have your signature in cursive. And it depends on your media. If you're painting, you can use a thin paintbrush to sign your piece, or you can buy a permanent ink pen that's very thin and sign it with a pen. So your signature is part of you saying, I am the artist. I just finished this piece. It is now done and ready to go out in the world. If there's no signature on it, it could mean that the piece is just in process and you're displaying it before it's finished. So it's a finishing touch, and it's a tradition going back centuries where famous artists have always signed their work. So it's identifiable that it's an original piece. It's signed by the artist. It is complete. It's ready to go out in the world and ready to sell. It's easily identifiable. So if somebody sees your work in an exhibition, they can go home, look you up online, and then maybe purchase a piece of your work in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for your question. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and resume the presentation. Thank you for your good questions. Okay, so next we're going to talk about pricing your artwork. So there's different considerations that you should take. There's some that are very identifiable, like the supplies, the materials, the framing, the time it takes. Those are quantitative. You can identify that easily. But there's other things that are not as easily identifiable, and they include your reputation. Your reputation is how many years have you been active? How many exhibitions have you participated in? How many galleries have shown your work? How many pieces have you created? Your pricing history. What have you priced your pieces in the past? So what you've done in the past informs what you do today. So did you start out at a low price? Did you start out at a high price? It's very difficult to lower your prices. So once somebody buys a 20-inch by 20-inch piece of yours for $5,000, then you can't just lower it next year to $2,500, because what if that person comes to your open studios and sees that a piece similar to what they bought is now half the price? They'll probably never buy a piece from you again. They'll wonder whether they can trust you. So you can't really lower your price. You can only go up. So you might want to inch up your prices over time. And your sales history comes into play. Have you sold a lot of pieces? The more pieces you sell, the more likely it is for you to increase your prices. If your pieces sell slowly, you might keep them at that price. So your pricing history and your sales history are also considerations to take. And then there should be consistency in your medium size and complexity. So if you do a series of 20 pieces and they're all 20 inches by 20 inches, and they're all the same medium, they're all the same size, but some are more complex and take more time than others, and some are simpler and take less time than others. They all within the series should be the same price, no matter how long it took, or no matter how complex or simple they are. It is confusing to the public to see pieces that are the same medium, the same size, that vary in prices. They go, so why is this one this price and why is that one that price? They look the same to me. So galleries have shared with me how important this is to be consistent in your prices according to the size and medium. Also, you need to take into consideration the gallery profit. You may not be selling through a gallery right now, but at some point you do plan on it. So you want to make sure that your pieces are all priced at a retail price. That's the price that they would sell in a gallery. Some artists have this term artist price that they use, which means half the gallery price, half retail. Well, that actually doesn't exist. What you're doing is selling your work at 50% off. So you should talk about retail only, the full price that you would ask for in a gallery, and that's the price that you should sell your artwork. And so then if next week a gallery approaches you and they want to sell your art and they take 50%, as most galleries do, your art is priced accordingly and you're not losing any money. So I have a friend who was very well known throughout the Bay Area for selling his work through coffee houses and cafes and outdoor art fairs and places where they didn't take a commission. And so after quite a few years of selling his work through at that particular price, then a gallery approached him and said, you know, we'd like to represent you, so we're going to sell your work at the same price. He goes, but then you take 50% and I only make half. No, I have to make what I'm selling it for. And then the gallery countered. We said, well, then we have to double your prices. And everybody knows you sell your work for this price. So nobody's going to buy artwork from a gallery at twice the price it was at a street fair last week. So he basically painted himself into a corner where a gallery couldn't represent him. Also think about discounts. So I don't like to discount my artwork. I think it means that I'm pricing it too high and therefore I have to discount it. Or if somebody asks me for a discount and I say yes, then what I'm saying is yes, it is okay to ask every artist you want to buy artwork from if they offer a discount. And I don't think that we should offer discounts. But if you feel that you must, keep this in mind. Most galleries will offer a 10 or 15% discount to clients that come back who bought their second piece, third piece that are a regular client. Usually if you buy your first piece from a gallery, they sell it to you at full price. But if you're a returning client, they may offer you a small discount of 10 or 15%. So if you actually feel like you need to discount your work, I recommend not going no higher than 10 or 15%. Okay. And then personal sales. These are sales that you're going to make to your friends and family. And of course, we'd love to give our friends and families a really good discount, a really good price on our work. But, you know, people talk and they'll say, oh, I got this from my friend so-and-so. He gave me a 40% discount. It was really good. And so that person they just shared that with is going to come and ask you, can I get a 40% discount just like you gave your friend? So, you know, you should keep this professional and keep if you're going to discount your work and you're going to have personal sales, sell it at full price or sell it at just a small discount to maintain the integrity of your pricing. Okay. So price increases, as I mentioned before, you want to inch those up. So you should have a reason for increasing your prices. Did you just win a major award? Did your art get accepted into a museum exhibition? Did you just get 2 or 3 galleries representing you? You get this major accomplishment, then it shows, okay, my career is moving up. It's time to increase my prices. And so you might increase them 10% and see what happens. Again, keep in mind, once you raise your prices, it's hard to lower them. So if you inch them up over time, you inch it up 10%, see what happens. Sales are still good. They don't slow down. Then maybe 6 months later or next year, you raise it another 10% and see what happens. Sales are still good. No negative impact. You raise it again. And so you inch it up over time. But if you make a big jump, like 20%, 30% all at once, people who've been following you have been thinking about buying your artwork and they're familiar with your prices may notice it and it may hinder them from buying your artwork. Okay, so any questions about pricing your artwork? I covered a lot of different ideas in a very short amount of time. So raise your hand if you have any questions about pricing your artwork. Okay, yes, Ray, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Could you speak a little more to the differences in pricing for or not changing the pricing for pieces that are more complicated and the same medium? I do lino printing, and sometimes prints take multiple layers, for instance. And like, would something like that affect the price? Or if it's the same size, it's the same size, and I should just bump up monochromatic prints so that when I have a multi-layer print, it doesn't feel as much of a hit to keep the pricing similar for the sizing?
So the answer to your question is yes. So it's very confusing to the public to see pieces that are the same size at all different prices. And it's so to overcome that, to make it easy for people to say, yes, I want to buy this piece. If they're all the same price with the same size, then and the same medium, that makes it easier. However, if for some reason you're going to create some prints that are going to take only one run through the press, but you're going to make another set of prints within the same concept that are going to have 3 or 4 runs through the press. Well, that's going to obviously take more time, more effort. So you might make the two a different size from each other. Make one that has just one run through, a little smaller, make those, I'm just making up numbers, 12 by 14, and then make the ones that are more complicated, that are going to have to sell for more money, a little larger, and have them 14 by 18 or something like that.
Gotcha.
So it makes it easier for your customers, your potential clients, to make sense out of the pricing because of that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, Elena, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes, I wanted to circle back to your story about your friend who was selling maybe more directly and then was approached by a gallery. Is the implication of that experience then they should have priced their their items with the assumption of like giving 50% away from the get-go, even if they are not currently selling at any location that takes a commission?
Yes. So
Okay.
I talked to many gallery owners and they all say artists should always sell their work at the retail price as if it's selling in a gallery. And several of the gallerists have said, oh, because you're being the gallerist for that weekend. If you're doing open studios, you're selling it yourself. You're paying for the rent. You're paying for the utilities. You're working that event. You're the gallerist. You're taking 50% of your own sales. So they say, look at it that way. So the artist should have started out with the pricing to allow for 50% if a gallery picks them up. The artist didn't pursue selling through a gallery, and then over time established that low price as the going price for his artwork, and therefore had a hard time ever getting to a gallery. So if you're not interested in ever selling through a gallery in your entire life, then price it however you want. But really, you should look at it as this is the retail price. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, Elena, thanks for asking. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and pick up and resume the presentation. Okay, so an artist should create an artist portfolio website. So when I go to a gallery and I'm looking at artwork, or I go to an exhibition in a not-for-profit organization, if there's a piece of artwork that I'm interested in buying, the first thing I do is I pull up my phone and look up their website. I want to look to see that, yes, they've made other artwork. Yes, they have made consistent artwork. Yes, they have an artist statement. They have different series. I usually look at their education, their background, their exhibit history, because I'm determining, is this an artist that is well-known or up and coming? By buying their artwork, I'm investing in their future. I don't want to buy a piece from someone who's not well-known and not going anywhere, or has no desire to create a career. So I want to check their background. So your website is an important tool for somebody like me who wants to buy your work. It's also the first thing that a gallerist does, is if they find out about you, they go to your website and they do their research and they look at who you are, they look at your artwork. So it's important to have a quality website. So if you have a homepage, I ask gallerists, if you go to an artist's homepage, what do you want to see? And they would see, we want to see a quality image or multiple quality images of the best artwork to grab our attention. If we go to an artist's website and the images on the homepage do not grab our attention, we're not going to go any further. We're not going to look at their portfolio page. We're not going to read their bio. So we have a limited amount of time. So you want to put your best quality work on your homepage, whether it's one image or multiple images. You should have a portfolio page. So a portfolio page is a page for each collection or series. So on the diagram below, you see there's portfolio at the top of the page, and then there's series 1, series 2, and series 3. Of course, these would be beautiful poetic titles for each series, and then there would be an artist statement for the entire body of work below that. And then they click on the image and go and see all the images that are in each series. You should have an artist bio and resume page with an artist photo. So you want to have a picture of you. It's great to have a photo of you in your studio making artwork so they can see, yes, you are a working artist. And here is the artist in their studio. That's great. If you can always have a separate page for an artist statement or exhibit history, but I like to have the artist statement with the portfolio, and I like to have the exhibit history generally with the resume. Then you should have a contact page, and that should include your email address. At least you can put your phone number there if you'd like, so people can call you up right away if they want to buy your artwork and they can't wait. And you wouldn't believe how many artist websites I go to, and there's no city or state or location of where they're located. And as a gallerist, that was very frustrating because I didn't know if they lived in the same area that I do or if they cross country. And it usually meant that I had to do some research. And if I was in a hurry, I wouldn't do the research, and therefore they didn't get an invitation. So those are the basic pages: homepage, portfolio page with the series pages, about page or bio page, and a contact page. So let's go back to the portfolio page. This can be called portfolio. Some people call it gallery or collections. I think using the word portfolio is more self-explanatory than a gallery. So is that a gallery? Is that an art gallery that's representing you, or collections? Do you collect things? Whereas a portfolio is pretty straightforward. This is a portfolio of the artist's work. Okay, your portfolio should be organized into series that make sense. So your series by theme or subject, or some artists do by media or year. But again, I don't like that. So just grouping all the media together and it's all different subject matter, or just putting all the pieces made in 2023 together, they could be a mishmash. So it's better to organize it by theme or subject matter. And then you should have an image on the portfolio page linked to each series page to invite the visitors to click and view. So they see the 3 different images on this page. Oh, I love the colors in series number 2. I think that's beautiful. Let's click on that and look at more pieces in that series. You may have your umbrella artist statement on this page. Again, I like to have images above the artist statement, which is usually longer below. So the images appear first and then your artist statement. Then here's an example of a series page. You have thumbnail images of pieces, and you can have 10 to 20 images per page. If you have more than 20 pieces in your series, you can have a second page with that. The bottom have click here to see additional works, and then the additional pieces are on another page. Gallerists have complained when it gets to be more than 20 images on a page, they just kept scrolling and scrolling. They don't know when it's ever going to end, and they may stop before they view all the pieces. So having no more than 20 per page allows them to look at everything on that page and then decide to go to the next page. You click on an image for a larger view. So you click on one of the thumbnails, it gets bigger. And of course, you should have at least 500 pixels on the shortest size, so you have good enough resolution. So all the relevant piece information, the title, the media, the year, which is optional, the price, again, which is optional. You don't have to put the price on there, should be on the piece when you open it up. Also the size. And then a lot of artists are doing this. They're adding a short description, a sentence or two, about what this piece is about individually versus all the other pieces in the series. You know, I chose to put a yellow pipe in this piece because my grandfather smoked a pipe just like this, and it brings back memories of such warm times with my grandfather. So that explains why there's this big yellow pipe in the piece, you know. So giving a little additional information is helpful as well. So the series page, you can include the artist statement for each series. So you notice there's a brief artist statement at the top and then the images, because now the artist statement isn't an introduction. The artist statement is saying, this series is different because I'm including this, and this series. And another series, this artist statement will say, this series has unique elements, and this is different from the other series because I'm exploring something else. And so it's like an introduction to give more information before the people view your images. And then you can have it linked to a separate page to see additional works in the series, as I mentioned. And many of the gallerists say, and I feel the same way, never mix sold and available pieces on the same page. I'll go to a page, I'll fall in love with the piece, I want to buy it, and then I find out that it's sold. Well, all the other pieces are not good enough now, and now I won't buy any piece. So you should put all the pieces available for sale on the first page. And then if you have pieces that have sold, you can have at the bottom of the page, click here to see sold works. And then they can go and see the works that have sold that they know before they even see them that they're not available to them. And again, I've heard many gallerists complain about artists mixing their sold and available pieces together on the same page. Okay, so any questions about the homepage, the portfolio pages? Raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume. Again, as I said, we have a lot of ground to cover, so we'll go ahead and jump ahead. So the next thing I want to talk about is your artist bio, resume, and exhibit history. So your artist bio. Your biography should be a brief statement of who you are as a person and as an artist, written in the third person from an objective point of view, as if somebody with credentials, somebody important has written this about you. And then this can include a factual highlights, such as you're included in the permanent collection at such and such museum, or your work was awarded first place in this collection. So you can include a couple factual highlights. You may include a photograph of yourself to make the biography more personal and put a face to your name. So this is a biography about you as a person and as an artist. And you can write 4 to 5 sentences that describe where you are from, any relevant education, training, or experience that you've had, something unique about yourself. And you can even include your current, work, what you're doing currently and what your goals are for your artist career. So those are some things that can be included in your biography. Okay, and then there's the artist resume. The resume is different from a biography. A resume is a bullet point list of your art accomplishments with entries in reverse chronological order. So the most recent entries go first. So if you have your education, you put your most recent education, your most recent classes, workshops, degrees, and then you go backwards in time. So resume headings could include personal. That used to be pretty regular back 30, 40 years ago. Very few people now include personal information. Usually your resume starts out with education. You can include any degrees that you have, but you can also include, if you've taken workshops online, classes with at a studio from a specific artist, any kind of education. What it says is, I'm serious about my art. I want to learn as much as I can. Not only do I have a degree from this art school or from this college, but I've taken all these extra classes as well. So it demonstrates that you are dedicated. You have your exhibitions, again, listed in reverse chronological order. Awards and recognition, residencies, if you have any residencies, press, if your work has been included or talked about in any publications, teaching experience, if you've taught classes, that's great. It shows that you've mastered what you're doing to the point that now you can teach. Any affiliations, so if you're a member of the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, or you volunteer at the DeYoung Museum or anything like that, art organization memberships. If you're a member of SFAN, you're a member of the San Francisco Women's Artists Gallery, you're a member of the Pacific Art League down in Palo Alto, you list any art organizations that you're a member of, and if you have any related experience that's tied to art. If you were in college, you were an apprentice with an artist or an artist, a teacher's assistant or something like that, you can include that. So these are all potential titles that you can use or resume headings that you can use. Okay, and it's great to keep an up-to-date resume listing all your art training and education, exhibition history, publications, and collectors. You wouldn't believe, again, how many artist websites I go to, and their website hasn't been updated in 2 years. Are they still alive? Are they still making artwork? Do I even waste my time? Do I waste my time if I even contact them? So you need to keep everything up to date. You get an award, you add it right away to your resume. You take a new class, you add it to your resume. So you keep it up to date. Then your exhibit history usually goes in your resume, but if you have a sufficient number of exhibition entries, if you have a lot, if you've been around for a long time, you have a lot to include, your exhibition history can be placed on a separate page. Okay, so headings within your exhibit history, I like to break it down into categories. Instead of having one long list that starts with the most recent and goes back in time, and somewhere in there you had a solo show, but it's buried in this long list. And somewhere you were in this prominent jury exhibition, it's buried somewhere in the long list. If you break it up and you have the most prestigious category first. So if you're in a museum permanent collection, then you put that as the first category and you list the museum or museums that you're in. If your artwork has been selected and purchased for corporate collections like AT&T or Facebook or Google, then you list a category corporate collections and you list the prominent companies that people are recognized under that category. If you don't have your work in museum collections or corporate collections, you can start with one-person exhibitions. And so one-person exhibitions, if you have one or two or several, put those first because that's most prestigious. If you've been included in a two-person exhibitions, that would be the next section. Then juried exhibitions. And what I like about juried exhibitions is it means that somebody was a juror and selected your work. So you list the name of the juror along with the exhibition. Then group exhibitions, benefit auctions, gallery representation, and art consultants that you've worked with. Okay, so any questions about your written material in your artist portfolio website? So if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have 18 years of exhibition history, but I was recently told by a commercial gallerist that I am a successful academic track artist and that my exhibition history doesn't like count essentially, despite having shown in like museums and internationally and at the Smithsonian. Like I have a lot of exhibition history, but I'm not sure like how to translate the exhibition history I do have to make it relevant to the commercial setting.
Okay, so are you doing radically different work now than what you were doing for those venues?
No.
So it's the same body of work.
It's several bodies of work, but yes, it's contiguous.
Okay. So many different people have different opinions, and you can ask 3 people the same question and you'll get 3 different answers. So that was one answer that you got. I disagree with them. When I asked gallerists, when you go to an artist's website and you look at their exhibition history, you look at their resume and their bio, what are you looking for? And they say, we're looking for evidence that this is an artist who is a professional, who's serious about their career, that this is what they're passionate about. So if I get to your resume and I see your listing, I have no doubt that you're professional, that you're dedicated to art, and that you're serious about the career. You have fulfilled my requirements. I don't have look at each individual listing as to whether it's in this museum or that museum or what. So yes, you were in the academic world and showing your work through that, category that this person, described, but that doesn't mean that you're not a good artist, that you're not a skilled artist, that you're not a serious artist. So I disagree completely with that person's opinion.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for your question. Any other questions before we move on? Raise your hand. Okay, Elena, if you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, my question is around for those of us who have like a full-time day job, should we talk about it as if that is non-existent and, or is it, what are the advantages and disadvantages of acknowledging that, hey, I also do this whole other unrelated thing to support
You're
myself?
talking about your website and your resume or your bio, is that correct?
Yeah, should I just omit that part altogether?
Okay, so everybody I've talked to said, only put job experience, whether it's current or past, if it's related to your art. So if you were a biologist and you are also making art and it is about the biological world, then your degree in biology and your current job makes sense. But if what you do is totally unrelated to your artwork, just leave it off. It's not relevant to who you are as an artist. In any future conversation, or if they want to follow up, the gallery wants to follow up with you, then that can come up later, but it's not relevant to your artwork. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, any other questions before we move on? Raise your hand. Okay, thanks for asking those great questions. We'll go ahead and resume the presentation. Okay, writing your artist statement. So your artist statement is your mission statement. This is your opportunity to fully discuss your personal beliefs, your influences, motivations, and purpose in making your artwork. A well-written artist statement can be an important tool in selling your artwork to potential clients, especially when you're not there in person. So gallerists use this to learn about your work. They basically memorize and fully understand your artist statement so they can very easily share that with their potential clients and help sell your artwork as well. So an artist statement can be as creative as your work, and it may include information about the style of work that you create, details about the materials you use, why you create this type of art, where you find inspiration, which other artists or movements influence your work, what your intentions are for your work, what led you to your career as an artist, where you see yourself as an artist in the future. So any or all of these can be included in your artist statement. An artist statement is best written in the first person. So this is my thoughts. These are my ideas. This is what I wanted to get across. This is what inspired me. It's in the first person. It's about you and your passion for making art. So how do you write an artist statement? So I use a 4-step method. What I do first is I assemble my elements. So I make a list of words and phrases. I look at my body of work. I make a list of all the words and phrases that come to my mind that describe it. Then I look up in the thesaurus definitions of those words and phrases and expand on my list. So that's starting to get my raw elements of what I'm going to use to write my artist statements. Then I write it out. So I like to write 3 paragraphs. So 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is an introduction. The second paragraph is a development. And the third paragraph is a closing. So I worked with an artist this morning. I do one-on-one consulting. We were working on his artist statement, and we wrote the first paragraph as what his inspiration was, what motivated him to create this body of work. The second paragraph was his technique and the actual making of the work. How did he make the work? Why did he choose to make the work this way? And then the third paragraph was what the symbolism, the meaning, the behind the artwork was, what he wanted people to get from viewing his artwork. So that was a natural progression of the introduction, development, and closing. So writing with 3 paragraphs, you can write anywhere from 3 to 5 sentences. So you don't want to have it too long for each paragraph, or people won't read it. You should use the present tense. This is what I am doing, not what I used to do. So that's another important thing. Then let it sit overnight. And this may sound silly, but in anything I write, I never publish it or finish it until I let it sit overnight and then read it the next day. That incubation time gives you detachment. You can read it more objectively. You can see it where you need to make some changes and edits, and it'll be a better document. And then number 4 is revise and polish it. So you read your statement out loud, you listen to how it sounds. Is it easy? Are the words easy to pronounce? Does it flow? Is it poetic? Then get a second opinion. Let somebody else that you know or that you trust read your artist statement and give you feedback like the grammar's off here, or, you know, wouldn't it be better if you included this, and give you some constructive criticism. Okay, so any questions about your artist statement? Raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, does everybody have an artist statement? Raise your hand if you have an artist statement. Okay, so it looks like most everybody has an artist statement. Are you happy with your artist statement? Yes? Okay, there's some work that you could do. Okay, so you might consider revising your artist statement using this method that I suggested. Okay, so let's go ahead and resume the presentation. Okay, you want to identify and approach venues to exhibit your artwork. Okay, so now you've made this great body of work, you've titled it, you've framed it, you've priced it, you've made a website, you've written your artist statement. Now where are you going to show it? So number 1 is art organizations, both local and national. So this is a great way to build up your exhibit history, is joining local art organizations or even national organizations. You all are members of SFAN. I mentioned San Francisco Women's Artist Gallery. I mentioned the Pacific Art League down in Palo Alto. These are organizations that have been around for a long time that people recognize. So if you're a member of organizations like this, or if you don't live in San Francisco, if you live out in Livermore, there's the Livermore Art Association. If you live in Marin County, there's the Marin Society of Artists. So you can join art organizations and participate in their exhibitions. They usually all have members exhibitions, whether it is in their own building or outside in other locations. Then you can join national organizations. So I am a collage artist. I'm a member of the National Collage Society. I'm also a member of the Collage Artists of America. Both organizations have exhibitions for members. They have online exhibitions as well as in-person exhibitions. So I participate with those. So my work has been exhibited in Atlanta and Cleveland and in Dallas and in, you know, major cities throughout the US by participating in these 2 national organizations. So look for organizations on a national basis that are for your medium. There's watercolor societies, there's sculpture societies, there's photography clubs, all sorts of different organizations on a national basis that you can join and show your artwork, and this can help you build your exhibit history. So other possible alternative venues would be outdoor art fairs. And included in that, you know, I know quite a few artists that have sold their work at local farmers markets. So farmers markets are set up on the weekend. And I know artists who have rented a table that's very inexpensive and set up their artwork at a local farmers market. So that's another thing that you could do to start showing and selling your work right away. Trade shows, if your work relates to a particular industry, you can connect with that industry and show your work. If your work is climate related, environmental related, connect with a local climate organization that protects the climate, protects the environment. Charity events, silent auctions, you know, SFAN has their charity auction every year in the Bay Area. There's Hospitality House. They have an annual auction. There is Art for AIDS. So those are regular auctions every year, and that gives you a lot of visibility. You know, we all start out showing our work in cafes and coffee houses. That's pretty common for artists. So you can look for cafes and coffee houses in your neighborhood that you might be able to show your work. Public buildings such as theater lobbies, bank lobbies, bookstores often show local artists' work. And I know several groups, both down in Southern California and Northern California, who rented empty storefront spaces for the holiday season. And then they mount their own gallery and keep it open for 2 or 3 months through the holidays. So you could do something like that as well. So any questions about potential venues to show your artwork outside of galleries? Okay, how many people have shown their work in any of these venues that I've listed? Raise your hand. Okay, good. So several people have taken advantage of that. Okay, so sometimes we've got to be creative about showing our artwork. Okay, another really great way to show your work is through juried exhibitions. So there's 2 types of exhibitions. There's curated shows and juried shows. So a curated exhibition is where artists are selected based on their history and body of work. So the people who decide we're going to put on this show at our gallery or at our not-for-profit organization or at our institution, and we're going to research artists in the area. We're going to visit them in their studios. We're going to read their artist statement, and we're going to select work from their body of work that's in their studio. And that's a curated show versus a juried show where the art is selected from submitted works in a blind jury process. So an organization will decide we're going to have a juried show. We'll decide on this theme. We're going to put a call for artists to submit. There's usually a charge. The regular charge is $35 or $40 to submit up to 3 pieces of work. And then they hire a juror. It's usually somebody well-known in the community, a museum curator. It could be a gallery owner. It could be an art educator. And so then the juror selects the artwork from the submitted pieces. They don't see the name of the artist. They don't see their website. They make a decision based on the theme and how the works match the theme. And that's a blind jury process. And so juried shows are a really good way to build up your exhibition history. So if you're going to submit to juried exhibitions, pay attention to who the jurors are for each competition. You want the most renowned and prestigious jurors listed in the exhibition history section of your resume or website. So the juror may mean more to the prestige of your inclusion than the actual organization that's hosting the competition or exhibition. So I've had my work selected for exhibitions where the juror was the curator of contemporary art at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. So that's the Atlanta Main Fine Art Museum. I've had my work selected by the curator of art at the Crocker Art Museum, which is the main museum in Sacramento. So the listing the juror, the name of the juror and their credentials is really impressive most of the time. So look for jurors that are of note and apply to those exhibitions. Read the prospectus and follow directions. Ask questions if something isn't clear. They'll have a deadline. They'll tell you how to label your images. They'll tell you what size the images should be, etc. Submit your work before the deadline, because if you don't, then you're not included in the juried process. Make sure your work is gallery ready and ready to hang, and follow all delivery and shipping instructions, whether it's 5 miles away or 500 miles away. Make sure that it's delivered on time in the manner that they're asking. Okay, so any questions about submitting to juried exhibitions? How many people have submitted to a juried exhibition? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm just going to pick a couple people. We'll see. Raise your hands again if you've been included in a juried exhibition. Okay, so the pictures are moving around a little bit. So Louise, do you mind unmuting yourself? and share with us what juried exhibitions your work has been included in?
Oh, sure, Stephen. Actually, there were several, and generally the juried exhibitions I had not gotten accepted in. Not sure why, you know, I got a pleasant, beautiful thank you for submitting, but it didn't fit our whatever the theme of their show was.
But you have been accepted to some juried exhibitions, correct?
No, I've been in the curated exhibitions.
Exhibitions, okay. So
Maybe I didn't read their instructions clearly, or my work just didn't fit that particular show for that particular theme.
okay, so I'm just share with you a tip.
Mhm.
You know, I was asking people who have had experience with their work in juried shows, but since you brought that up, I'm just gonna share a tip. So several years ago, while living in the Bay Area, I was submitting to shows on a national basis, on a regional basis, and I was finding that I wasn't always getting into very many of these shows. So I decided, you know, I want to really build up my exhibit history to have more entries each year. So I changed my strategy and I looked at local small organizations. I looked at the Coastal Art League in Half Moon Bay. I looked at the Northern California Museum of Art in Chico. I looked at the Pacific Grove Art Society. And I looked at smaller organizations. So when they have a call to artists, they may only have 200 or 300 submissions versus a national juried show, which may have 2,000 submissions. So I started submitting to some smaller organizations and I started getting accepted more frequently. So you might look for smaller organizations like that. And I found a lot of those calls on a website called Juried Art Shows. So you might look into that website and you might find some more places to submit your work and to have better success. Okay.
Well, the two I did were small galleries, the Live Worms Gallery, as you know, and the Drawing Room, those two small ones in Chicago. I'm sorry, Chicago, in San Francisco. So I did get into those two juried shows, but they, you know, on small levels like that.
Okay. Yeah. So continue to look on that. And that's a good way to start your building your juried exhibitions. Okay. Thank you for unmuting yourself. Okay. There's two people that don't have their video on, that have their hands up. So I'm going to call on Shannon. If you could unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi there. Sorry, I had my hand up in response to the juried exhibition question. That's all.
Okay. And what juried exhibitions have you been included in?
I was fortunate to be included in a juried exhibition at Arc Gallery and Studios for Kaleidoscope that was in 2023.
Yeah.
And then one at San Francisco Women's Artist Gallery as well, called Being Human.
Okay, good. So those are both good places to submit to. The Sanchez Art Center in Pacifica, they have the Left Coast Annual Exhibition every year. That's also a very prestigious exhibition to get into. So all of you might look into that as well. And then we have Denia, you have your hand up. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, I do want to apologize about the camera thing. My thing is malfunctioning.
Okay,
and
that happens.
I tried to turn it on. All I saw was a black square. And then I'm like, well, if you can see me and I can't see me, that's not very good. So anyhow, I was just raising my hand for the jury thing as well. I've been in about 3 or 4 at SFWA.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for participating in that. We'll go ahead and resume the presentation. Let's see, let's click here. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is submitting to art galleries, you know, so that's usually a goal for every artist, is to get their work shown in a gallery. That's one of the best reinforcements that we're doing good artwork. So I suggest that you research and visit art galleries before approaching. It's a good idea to understand who they are, who they represent, what they do, what their price range is, how big or how small of work they represent. And it's really good to be able to tell that when you visit them. You also want to tell, are they friendly? Do they get up from the desk and come talk to you? Or they just stay behind the counter and never even acknowledge that you walked into the gallery? If you're going to work with a gallery, you may work with a gallery for the next 5 or 10 years or even longer. And so you want to make sure that these are people that you get along with, that you enjoy working with, and vice versa. So you want to find out the gallery's submission policy and procedure. It used to be that most galleries had a submission policy. Now I don't find that on their websites very often, but a submission procedure is usually to email them with a link to your website. And when I email a gallery, if I'm interested in having my artwork there, since I know a lot of gallerists, I know their complaints, I know what they're looking for, I write my email in this way. I basically acknowledge I've been to your gallery or I've been to your website. I acknowledge who they are. Galleries share with me, you wouldn't believe all the artists that contact us that never should have contacted us in the first place. There's a plein air gallery in Laguna Beach, and the owner says, Stephen, you wouldn't believe people send me submissions that are graphite figure drawings. Well, we only do plein air. You know, that doesn't, they didn't even research who we are. So acknowledging I've been to your gallery or visited your website, give them a little compliment. I'm real impressed with your roster of artists, or I really love your exhibition that was up last month. And then introduce yourself briefly. I'm an artist in Newport Beach, and I do photography on nature, and I concentrate on clouds and waterfalls. And I invite you to look at my website at the following link, and then you have a hot link to your website, and then you ask them to take action. So what I just described is in the handout, but I did it off the top of my head. So you can give a brief description of your work. You conclude with a link of your website. And the other thing that is really helpful is to give them an open invitation. I'll meet with you in person at your gallery, or you can visit me at my studio at your convenience, or if you'd like, I can send you additional materials. So giving them some options to choose. So this is an example of a good email to send to an art gallery. Okay, if you're looking for galleries, there's several websites. There's artcollecting.com. They have the largest comprehensive listing of galleries in the United States. So it's broken down by state and then by region or city, and they list specific galleries, and they have links to each gallery website. So if you want to look in Northern California, you want to look in Southern California, there's whole pages on that. And there's also the San Francisco Art Dealers Association. This is an association of some of the best galleries in the Bay Area. They're all members of an association. They're all listed on the website, and then each one has a page that gives information about that gallery. So these two places are great places as a starting out point to research where galleries are that you should go visit or that you should contact. And then, as I asked gallery owners, how do you find new artists? This was a big surprise. They said, well, we usually pick up new artists that we already know. So I said, so you have a submission policy of having people email you? Yeah, but they're usually artists we don't know. So if we have an opening, we usually have a stable. Like a gallery may have a stable of 24 artists. And so they can't take on a new artist because they have a full stable. But then one retires or one moves across country and they no longer represent them. So they have an opening or two. And so they go, okay, so we need to pick up a new artist or two new artists. So what do? They usually contact artists that they already know. This is artists that they've met organically. So I asked them, how does that happen? Like, how do you know these artists? Well, they come to our openings. They come visit our gallery. They've been visiting us for the last several years. We get to know them. We get to talk to them on a regular basis. They come in on a Wednesday afternoon when nobody's here, and we spend an hour shooting the breeze, and we get to know them. And so we look up their website, we may go to their studio and we get to know them. So this is kind of organically happening. So what this tells me is that artists should identify galleries that they want to be represented by, and then start being their best fan. Go to their opening receptions, go to visit the gallery once a month or every other month, visit them during regular hours, engage in a conversation with them. Don't present yourself as, hey, I'm an artist, I want you to represent me, because gallerists hate that more than anything. So just do it organically, network with them, get to know them, let them get to know you. I've been invited by several galleries to participate in one-off shows because I got to know them. They got to know me. We visit every time I go see their gallery, and they found out what kind of work I do. And so things like that can organically happen. So visit the galleries, get to know the owner, the director, and the staff, and become their biggest fan. Follow the galleries on social media. Go to Instagram and follow those, like and comment and share their posts, which may bring their attention to you. As a gallery owner, if somebody reposted posts that we posted or liked my posts for our gallery many times or commented on a regular basis, I'm going to say, see that name? I see that name all over and over again. I don't know who it is. Let me look at their profile on Instagram and find out who they are. So that could bring attention to you, to these galleries. Network with other artists and join art organizations where you may learn of opportunities. Referrals from current exhibiting artists are the #1 way that gallerists find new artists. So a lot of time, artists that they already are representing will say, you know, you should check out so-and-so artist. They're really good. They're a friend of mine. They'd be great for your gallery. You know, when I lived in San Diego, I went to an art opening. There's an artist that I'd never heard of, had never met before. I was really impressed with her artwork. She was really busy talking to people. So I kind of stood in the background until there was nobody talking to her. And I walked up and I just said, you know, my friend and I have gone to 5 shows tonight, and your work is by far the best. And she said, oh, well, thank you so much. She said, how do you go to 5 shows in one night? I said, well, so, you know, we keep up with this and we go to all these openings. She goes, I never get to openings. Here's my card. The next time you go, would you invite me to go with you? Sure. So we invited her. So over the next couple of months, we went to a bunch of openings. We got to know each other. I already was familiar with her artwork. She became familiar with mine. And so one time when we were out going to some openings, she said, you know, I think your work would be ideal for the art consultant that I worked with. Do you mind if I recommend you to her? And I said, well, of course not. So the next week I got a call from her art dealer, her art consultant. And she said, you know, Elizabeth recommended that I look at your website. And I'm really impressed. I have this big job coming up, and I want to meet with you because this might be a good solution. And so I met with her, and it ended up being an installation of 35 pieces in the lobby of the new Johnson & Johnson headquarters that was being built in La Jolla. And there was a competition, and I put in proposals along with 3 other artists, and my artwork was selected, and I had the largest installation and purchase of my artwork in my career. And that's because I went to an art opening and introduced myself to an artist, and it led organically to this great result. So that's a good example of how networking can pay off. Participate in portfolio reviews, submit to juried exhibitions where the gallerists will see your artwork. So these are all good ways to make the gallerists aware of who you are. So any questions about submitting to art galleries? Okay, Em, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
I have found that this system of organically networking is quite ableist, and I
don't know what that means. I'm sorry.
Ableist as in unintentionally discriminatory against disabled people.
Okay.
In that, like,
okay.
People who don't have the energy levels to show up in person, people who don't have like the social skills to be charming in person are less likely for this to be successful. So I'm curious if there are ways for people who are not charming in person to go about networking.
Okay, well, so what you just described is true. And this system that of the organic networking really shows preference to people who you just described, who are charming and can get around easily. So that's a really good question. Let me think just a second. Number one, an alternative that I've used that was successful and that I do coaching with artists that I work with, we've tried this as well, is to send out mailings. Now, in this day and age, hardly anybody mails anything. But 30 years ago, I got a stack of postcards in the mail for art exhibitions every day. So that was the main thing. So if you print out a postcard or you print out a booklet like through Shutterfly, and you have a page spread for one series, another page spread for another series, you have your art bio on one inside cover, you have your artist exhibition history annotated on the next one, you have pictures of you and a little history about you, and you put together a mailing and you send that out in an envelope. That's a great way to get attention because nobody does this anymore. So all of a sudden, a gallery gets this great booklet or this series of postcards over the next 6 months from this artist. And this is something they could keep, they can put on their bulletin board, they can file it in a file cabinet. I actually had an art consultant that I had mailed some postcards to over time. And 2 years after the mailings, she gave me a call out of the blue. You know, I have a postcard of your artwork on my bulletin board in front of my desk. I don't know how I got it, but your artwork would be perfect for this job that I have. So it could stay in their office for a long period of time. Whereas if you send an email, it just gets dropped down and disappears into nowhere. So doing a mailing, you also, when I did mailings like that, I made it's something that they couldn't help but open, that they could readily identify. So my artwork is square. I made a square packet, square booklet. I got red envelopes. I cut them down and made them square, and I mailed a red square envelope to each gallery. And then 2 weeks later, I picked up the phone and called, said, "Hi, I'm Stephen C. Wagner. I mailed you my artist portfolio in a red square envelope. I want to check to make sure that you received it." Everybody went, "Oh yeah, I got that." They remembered that. So put it in a format that they'll remember and then have a cover letter. Okay, is that a good suggestion? Okay, Em, thanks for the really good question. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Louise, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Louise, be sure to unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. Apologies. Yes, I was just referring to what the last speaker was talking about. I have a question about that. Actually, friends are really good advocates as well, or at least my friends are, and they're always talking to the gallery owners about my work. But aren't there some like professional on that level, or weren't there at some time in history, professional, and I'm not sure what they're called, but they advocate for the artists?
Agents.
Yeah, agents.
So there used to be a lot of agents, and the art world has changed. It's more challenging now, and agents make less and less money, and so there's people stop becoming agents or left the industry altogether. So there's very few agents out there. I've worked with an agent in the in 1999, and I found out that once you sign a contract with them, any gallery they place your artwork with, they get a cut of sales from that gallery for the rest of your life. And then I didn't like that. So I tested it out in the New York area. I had a 1-year contract and I ended it after that. So I wouldn't use an agent. They're hard to find and they take too much money. But I think it's a good suggestion to have friends of yours to go out to galleries and just say, you know, I really love your exhibition. This looks really great. you know, whose artwork would be great in your gallery? So-and-so, you should check out their website. It's coming from a third person, and they usually listen to that. So you can, it's kind of fudging the system a little bit. But Louise, thanks for that suggestion. Shannon, you have your hand up. Go ahead and mute yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much. My question is in regards to timeline. When do you feel it's appropriate in an artist's career to make the leap to start reaching out to galleries? The context here is, you know, like I've shared, I've been in a few like juried exhibitions and group shows, but I worry that my history is not mature enough yet, you know, where it might be a bit premature to make that jump. So I was
Okay.
curious if there's a rule of thumb.
Yeah, so I think if you feel that way, it's probably the case. So you need to have maybe 5 exhibitions a year at least that you have participated in. They could be juried exhibitions, they can be curated exhibitions. It can include things that are organized by SFAN, but make that your goal to have at least 5 exhibitions every year. The more, the better. My goal as a mature artist is I get into 5 new venues each year that I haven't shown in the past, because I've already shown in so many venues. Being in the same venue again and again doesn't have much importance. It's getting into a new venue that has importance. So trying to get into as many venues as you can, and new venues, not just the same venue over and over again. By joining art organizations and submitting to jury shows is the best way to build up your exhibit history in a quick way. Okay.
Perfect. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and resume the presentation. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is promoting yourself and your events. So you should, the most effective way to promote yourself and to promote events like opening receptions where your art is included is through email. Social media has become less and less important, and especially since the inauguration and the controversy with social media and the current administration, there's very little activity on Facebook. There's very few people liking it and commenting on posts. There's been a lot of people dropping off of social media. So over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become less and less effective, and now it's dropped immensely. So I'd say still stay on Instagram, link your Facebook to Instagram. So when you post on Instagram, it shows up on Facebook. Like any of the posts that your friends and artist friends are posting to show them your support on social media. But email is the thing that works. So send email invites using a newsletter platform such as MadMimi, MailChimp, SendPulse, Constant Contact, or Vertical Response. Most of these allow you to create an account for under 2,000 emails. And then once you hit over 2,000 emails, you have to start paying. So there's, if you're don't already have a newsletter, that's really important. You can promote your events. You can promote, I just finished a new series I'm so excited about, and show images of that series. Or I just won first place at the Marin County Fair art competition. Well, so, you know, you win something like that, you want to announce it. So every month, send out an email, let people know what you're working on, any accomplishments, any upcoming shows, open studios, things like that. You can print flyers and postcards to mail, and you can distribute at different venues or hand out to people you meet. You probably all know Trish Tunney with Mission Artists, and she is such a big promoter. She says she carries her postcards with her everywhere she goes, and she's ready to hand them out to anybody she meets. So that's, you know, just the old-fashioned way. You can promote through social media, Facebook and Instagram, but as I said, they become less important. Anything that you print or that you post or on your website should have a link to your website. So anything that you do to promote your work should have a link to your website or have your website printed on it. Okay, so if you're having an event like Open Studios, 2 months beforehand, this is my recommendation for a timeline. Write your press release. Most people don't write a press release anymore. I write a press release because that's my master document. It has the who, what, where, and when. It has all the information. It talks about the venue. It talks about me. It talks about what artwork I'm going to show. It gives the dates, etc. So I can send this press release out. I can post it online. So this is something most artists don't know, but there is a website called PR Web. That's PRWEB. I've used them. You can go and for a fee, I think the second lowest number is the most relevant. So I think it's $199 for a press release. You can post your press release. You can select your geography. You can select your demographics. You can select your subject matter, and it will be sent out to online websites, say online magazines, print newspapers, TV stations, radio stations. It'll be sent out to all these places. And when I've used it, I've gotten so many hits. If I Google my name, I'll see ABC website has my article, and ABC or CBC TV has my article, and I'll find it all over the place. And what's great is most of those last for about 5 years. So when people Google your name, these stay up and show up for the next 5 years. So write a press release, send it out, compile your posting content and quotes, any text that you're going to use, any images, prepare an image library. So all the images that you're going to use for your email newsletters, for any of your posts, for anything that you do, start putting them together 2 months in advance so you're not caught up in the last minute rush. Then a month beforehand, post a save the date notice on social media, and then email a save the date notice through your email platform, and then start posting related content every day. Post something about your upcoming event, piece that's going to be there, information about the venue, what you're working on for that show, how you came up with this idea. Then 2 weeks before, you can email your actual event invite. So the save the date is a teaser. It gets saves the date, January 20th, and then say, join me on January 20th for my open studios at such and such. And then that's about all the information you need, and you have some links. And then your actual email invite that you send out 2 weeks later will have all the information and the times and the information about the venue and how long it's been there and other artists that are going to be there and stuff like that. Then 3 days before, mail another email invite. There's people like me. If I get an email 2 weeks before, I get my calendar out and I write it down. And there's other people that read it, forget about it, don't even remember the next day. So if you send an email out and again 3 days before, they're going to go, oh, that's this weekend. Okay, I'm going to go. And then the day of the event, you can post on social media, please join me for my open studios at such and such venue. You can post messages and photos of the event periodically also on social media. Then after the event, you can post a thank you to all who attended on social media. You can add contacts from your guest book to your email address book. So during any event, you want to collect as many email addresses as you can to build up your email address book. So have a clipboard, ask people to sign their name or write their name and write their email address. Then email a thank you to all the people who signed your guest list. Send a thank you to any of the people who bought artwork from you. If there's somebody that was looking at a piece, but they didn't buy it, you might email them. Thank you so much for coming to visit me. I was really happy that you liked my piece, XYZ. Here is an image of that piece that you can look at to remind you. And then they go, oh yeah, I love that piece. I want to buy it now. And then make notes of what was successful and what changes you should make for future events, because those are fresh in your mind. So email newsletters are the most effective means of promoting yourself and your event. So any questions about that? Raise your hand. Okay, how many people do use an email newsletter? Raise your hand. Okay, not very many. I highly recommend that you start up an email newsletter platform. It is the best way to get people to attend events and let them know about you. And people that are on your email list are usually people who are most interested in you and your artwork and are most interested in potentially buying your work. So I would, if you're starting out, you could use MailChimp or Mad Mimi. Those are very popular for the smaller email lists. If you get, I have 18,000 on my email list, so I use a different platform that's designed for larger numbers. So Em, you raised your hand, you have an email platform. Can you unmute yourself and tell us what platform you use?
I host my website on Squarespace and I use the integrated newsletter service inside of Squarespace.
Okay, and have you found having an email newsletter to be effective?
Not for prints, for sales of prints, yes.
Yes,
But
okay.
not for event attendance or
Okay.
sales of original works.
You know, I think since the pandemic, fewer and fewer people are getting out. They got spoiled and staying at home. But you brought up, that's a really good way to sell work online as you send out. And how do you collect your email addresses? Who's on your email list?
Basically on my website, I just have like a box that says like sign up here for my newsletter.
Okay.
And then
Okay, that's a really good way to collect email addresses, is to have a what we call a widget on your website where people can fill in their name, their email address, and be added to your email list. Okay, Em, thank you for unmuting yourself and sharing that. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap up the program. So I put together a little list of actions that you can take. So I think setting small achievable goals and do at least one thing every day for your art career is important. And so, you know, sometimes it can feel really daunting to build your career. So I put together just a few things like visit an art gallery or museum. That gives you inspiration. Read an art magazine, whether print or online, also to get inspiration. Read a bio of a famous artist that you admire. Oh my God, I learn so much from reading biographies of artists that I love. Really helped me. Shop for art supplies, draw ideas in your sketchbook, experiment with different art materials, or take a photo shooting exhibition to capture images. So all these are steps that you can take every day to keep your art making alive. Okay, so I put this in here as a regular, but I will email everybody who signed up for this program with a PDF file handout of this. So everything that you saw in writing is included, so you can keep that and use that in the future. I have programs that I do this spring every other Monday night, and there's a $10 special art span price. So 2-hour programs are $35 and 1-hour programs are $25. But I'm offering to all ArtSpan members $10 for any program this year. And every week on Friday, ArtSpan sends out an email newsletter, and they have sign up for Stephen's programs through the Artist Network and get for only $10. And you click on that link, it takes you to the registration page. So there's a lot of great detailed information that I share, like tonight, for only $10. So take advantage of the ArtSpan price to join me. In March, there's alternative avenues to selling your artwork. So let's go into a lot of detail on that. Create an attention-grabbing portfolio website. Stand out and shine. In April, there's working with art consultants and interior designers and how to stand out crowded social media. And there's programs in May as well. And then I take a break in the summer. So it'd be great to see any of you in those programs. Also, I do one-on-one consulting. As I mentioned, I do a first-time special. If you've never worked with me, it's $99 for a 1-hour session to help you develop strategy, goals, and action plans for your artist career. And then there's another program called the Quick Grant Program that reimburses California artists up to $600. So you could work with me and receive 4 free 1-hour sessions if you apply to the Quick Grant. And I've been working with artists through the Quick Grant program for 6 years now. I've worked with several hundred artists, and just about every artist that submits an application gets accepted. So a regular 1-hour session is $145. 4 sessions is $580. That falls under the $600. So they would reimburse you upfront with $600 that then you pay me for each 1-hour session. So email me if you're interested, and I can share more information about that. I'd be happy to answer any questions and help any artist out in their career. Okay, so you can register for any online professional development programs or learn more about the one-on-one consultation on the Artist Network website. That's www.sfartistnetwork.org. And if you know of other artists that you think would benefit you from these programs, please share the website link to the Artist Network programs with them or forward the emails to them as well. Okay, so before we end, I'd like to just get feedback from you about what was valuable in this presentation, and it's helpful to get your feedback. So each person that has their video on where I can see you, I'm going to ask you one by one to unmute yourself and share with me one thing that you thought was new or important that you heard tonight. So Shannon, I'm going to start with you. You're on the top of my screen. So if you unmute yourself and share with me one thing that you felt was a key takeaway from tonight's program for you.
Yeah, thanks so much. The chief takeaway I will mention is differentiation between the artist bio and the artist statement,
Okay.
and like the distinct utility of both of them, and kind of the role they play in your career. And that was a great learning point for me. So thank you.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that, and thanks for joining the program tonight. And we have Kathleen. Kathleen, if you want to unmute yourself and share with me one thing that you thought was new or important that you heard in tonight's program.
Well, there were definitely a number of things, not just one. Really appreciate it, because as you were talking, I was Googling away. So I searched out juried art shows online, looked at PR Web, anything like that. So as you were talking, I was, also kind of looking things up, finding the local galleries and so forth. So really appreciate the time. Is great.
Okay, so you like the specific suggestions like that you could look up, Kathleen?
Both, really both. Yeah.
Okay.
I think some of the things I've worked on, but there's a lot still I have yet to learn. So I appreciated the comprehensiveness of it.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen, for sharing that and for participating in the program tonight. Em, if you want to unmute yourself and share with me one thing that you thought was a good takeaway from tonight's program.
I like that your language is clear and concise. The most memorable thing to me is that the thickness of a frame denotes value, which is not a thing I had thought about before. And I will now attempt to frame textile pieces that can be framed with thicker frames.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for all your good questions tonight too. Em, thanks for participating. And then Louise, if you want to unmute yourself and share with us one thing that you felt was new or important that you heard in the program tonight.
What was important for me is I've been on many of your workshops and appreciated all of them, but what you did here is you summarized all of them by hitting the highlights of all of them, and I absolutely needed that big refresher, so thank you.
Okay, great, that's good. Yes, so this was the greatest hits, like a highlight of everything that you should do. Then my programs go into a lot more detail in each topic. So Louise, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for joining us tonight. And then Elena, if you want to unmute yourself and share with us one thing that you thought was a key takeaway from tonight's program for you.
Sure. I really appreciated how concrete the layout for the website and portfolio was. It was there's like a formula that I could follow. And so there's very clear like next steps in terms of things that I want to get done and change.
Good. So the diagrams that I used were really helpful for you. That's good to hear. Thank you, Elena, for sharing that. And thanks for joining us tonight. And then Ray, if you want to unmute yourself and share with us one thing that you felt was a key takeaway from tonight's program.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that I really I'm going to take away from this, but I think the general sense is how detailed and formulaic the process can be and how you've laid it out to be like a checklist that I could follow. That's
Okay,
like
good.
so helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So the PDF file you could use as your checklist.
Exactly. I'm
Hey,
really
that's
looking
great
forward
to
to
hear.
that.
Okay, so Ray, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your questions tonight and for participating. And Arvid, if you want to unmute yourself and share with me one thing that you felt was new or important that you heard in tonight's program.
Well, first of all, thank you.
Sure.
I am a newbie. I've only drawn on my own time and kept it inside. So art is not my primary, but I really want to put outside. So whatever you gave, everything was new to me. Actually, Ray summarized it really well, that it became like the way you framed it, organized it, broke it down into pieces, where to start from. That's what I was actually looking for. Everything from even more than the gallery, it was more about how do you promote yourself, how to have a website, how to get into exhibitions. When do you think it is matured enough to go into gallery? Each and every piece of that was quite helpful. And I read some things about the pricing, where the framework that you gave about how to put yourself there was, I had no clue about any of those things. And those are not available online either. So thank you so much for that.
Okay, good. So it sounds like this was the right program for you, and I'm glad you got so much out of it. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I appreciate seeing a lot of new faces, and I will email you in just probably 10 minutes with the PDF file that you could save, you can print out, you can use as your checklist as you suggested. Thank you for that idea. And it was really fun to share all this information. I went pretty fast to try to cover everything in a short amount of time, and we are 40 seconds over our program. So, so good timing. So thank you, everybody. So good to see you. I was really enjoyed making the presentation. So take care, and I hope to see you at future programs. Good night.